Hello, boxing fans around the world. Thank you once again for joining us on Talkin Fight and Boxen247, Kristian and Graeme, as we discuss who's next in the lineup for the heavyweight championship as it rolls through the next two big fights coming up this weekend and then on your birthday on October 9th. But after that, what happens next? We have a whole lineup of heavyweights contending, and it's quite a good list. I mean, I have to admit, I've gone through it several times since we talked about it yesterday. Do I have a favorite going in? No, there's a few off the chart kind of contenders though I'd like to talk about. But who do you think's up next, Kristian? What do you think?
Well, the problem we have is as we had the AJ versus Usyk press conference today, and Usyk's team stressed the fact, and I like how they added it into the interview where they said that it was words something like, and look forward to the rematch, whichever way that goes round. So, those titles, bar the WBC, is obviously going to be held up for a period of time. In line to that, obviously, you've got the mandatory fighters. Now, those fighters, I can only imagine, aren't going to take any risks. So it's then going to domino further down the line with who is going to be. I mean, these heavyweights are going to have to face each other. Otherwise, they're going to be waiting around for a shot. Certainly, but everything excluding the WBC, and obviously, which with whatever happens with the WBC title with Fury and Wilder, will there be a fourth match with that? I don't know what the legalities is. That I can only guess that there won't be a rematch attached to this one. So at least the WBC, I think, after their fight will be up for an available contender. Which is not going to be, I think, Usyk or AJ, unfortunately. What is very interesting, and I was writing, there was a post earlier on the website, and that is about, obviously, the undercard on the Fury Wilder 3 on October the 9th. Very, very interesting. We've got Efe Ajagba versus Frank Sanchez, both unbeaten. The key thing with these two fighters is both are untested. If you said with each fighter who was their best win, there isn't anybody that stands out. It's the usual sort of journeyman, etc. So talking about those two fighters, we're looking at potential. Who's going to win out of that fight? I really don't know. There's too many questions with those two. But one unbeaten fighter is going to emerge from there. And I can imagine they're going to be getting a good ranking, whoever the victor will be. Out of those two, who do you see? What do you know about them so far?
I like the Nigerian.
Yep.
Ajagba. He's really good. I actually haven't seen Frank Sanchez. But the other, just speaking of that card, a fighter that Mike was promoting the other day, Jared Anderson, is on that card as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so I mean, he goes by the nickname Big Baby for some unknown reason.
The real Big Baby.
Anyway, so he's going up against another unbeaten fighter, Russian Tereshkin.
Yes.
So that's going to be a really good fight to watch on so many different levels. But of the two you mentioned, I like the Nigerian, Ajagba.
Sanchez doesn't really jump out. Seen a couple of his fights. Cuban, well schooled, obviously unbeaten. But there's a lot of questions in the second to last fight. He looked very open. And it wouldn't surprise me if he lands up being KO'd, but it all depends really what Ajagba is like, with his defence, because he's a come forward fighter. I think he's been down once, I think, in his career. I seem to recall that. But I think Ajagba, will come victorious from that. I mean, with the two fights that we've mentioned, I think, and I can definitely see it, is the two victors, the two respective victors, obviously facing off. But it's a very interesting night because obviously the main event, I'm actually looking forward to that. Obviously with Wilder and Fury again, even if it's the third fight, I still think there's still so many questions with that. And I think personally, Wilder is going to get the victory. But what a great night. It's a full card of heavyweights. Absolutely great. Moving over from those respective fights, you've got Joyce. The chap is sat there. He's 13 fights. He's got a very good resume, and I think actually one of the best resumes out there. Yes, people say he's very plodding. He's like a mummy, sort of reminiscent of the early sort of George Foreman. He does get hit. Luckily, he's got a very good chin.
Yes.
But his resume is very good, and he seems to, and so far has got the job done with whoever's put in front of him. He did well, obviously, with Daniel Dubois,
Yeah.
winning that fight. With his last fight with Sakamba, he was very, very open, which was alarming. But we know he is. We know that that chin can be tagged. And that's, bearing that in mind, will make, I think, an exciting fight with anybody. Who's next up for him, I don't know, but he's definitely up there. And it's already been stated that he's going to be, after Usyk, he will be the next mandatory WBO a contender out there. He's going to be mandatory, but I do think this AJ Usyk thing, if they're going to have two fights, that's going to further delay anything that's going to happen with obviously Fury. If he comes through that fight, it's still a bit of a mess. Even once we've got these two big fights out the way. What's going to happen is going to be the rematch, with Usyk. Let's say, for example, AJ wins, so rematch with Usyk. Then you've got to deal with the mandatory. So where does Fury, slot in with all of this? They'd have to pay Joe Joyce off. The problem is Joe Joyce isn't young, and is certainly, it's not something he doesn't want to be inactive, which he hasn't been yet. But what do you do in his place? He's going to have to take some risky fights. It's going to have to be somebody like a Hrgovic, a Dillian Whyte. Moving on to Hrgovic, looks very good, but again, it's all down to what he is capable of, as opposed to proven resume. Because again, if you said what was Hrgovic's best win, there's nothing that really stands out. And this is the case with quite a few of the fighters out there. I'm not saying it's Hrgovic's fault that he hasn't fought some of the best, because apparently they've been scouting for top opponents for mandatory shots. I think it's the IB, is it the IBF one? And nothing forthcoming whatsoever. Hrgovic, how do you stand with him?
Like him, I like him a lot. I'm not so sure he's ready to step up yet. He's unbeaten. He's 13-0. But I'm not so sure he's really proven himself among the big boys, shall we say. In the same manner, the Frenchman, Tony Yoka, he's unbeaten, but
yes,
he's in that same caliber, if you ask me.
Yep.
Someone who you Brits might want to look out for is a fellow out of California, Michael Hunter.
Yes, former cruiserweight who's moved up. One loss, obviously, to Usyk. Yeah.
So I mean, there's a couple they're bubbling under, as they say, that I'd like to see step up. But as you're saying, I mean, we've agreed and talked about, it's a clogged up battle up top that needs to be cleared out. And once that is cleared out, you've got some really decent fighters waiting for their chance to move up. I'm not a fan of Joseph Parker. I don't really care about Derek Chisora either. But, those are among the top contenders that are identified by most of the professionals in the business today. But it's going to be interesting to see how this all shapes up. 2022 is obviously going to be a great year, I hope, anyway, depending on how these next two fights turn out. It's going to be a great year for these up and comers, and some who are, shall we say, middle age. But
yeah, and even more than that in some cases. But I think we'll leave that one to yeah.
And we haven't even mentioned Andy Ruiz. Andy Ruiz, he's
and probably Ruiz. I mean, he was top. But he's, I think, a big problem. This is something that I could talk about till I'm red in the face, and it's all down to weight. I think that he ate himself, or parted himself, out of the rematch with Joshua. As much as Joshua came in and was lighter and a different approach, that was a combination of that and obviously the horrific weight in which Ruiz came in.
Yeah.
The problem is that obviously with Ruiz's last fight, with the very over the hill Chris Arreola, he was decked, and he didn't put Arreola away. And Arreola, not does him too much, but his pass his best. Ruiz looked a little bit gun shy. Wasn't the same. and I didn't like the lack of punch resistance there. And going on to the weight, and I think this is a very typical case of where fighters lose weight, the punch resistance goes. I've had this conversation with so many people. It's not healthy. I don't think Ruiz should be coming in as a slender, lighter or much lighter heavyweight, not just the, put it bluntly, the obese whale that he came in that rematch in Dubai. But light isn't right, the famous Angelo Dundee quote. He's got to go back to what worked for him, and that was obviously the weight that he came in and was fighting at, obviously in the first AJ fight. I think that coming down in weight's going to be the ruination of him, and I think you'll find, it's just an opinion, but I think you'll find that he will never find his form again. Because once, I've put this to so many people, there's never been anyone that's lost weight and fought successfully. And the full, how could I put it, example of that is, can anyone name heavyweight that has moved down to cruiserweight and fought successfully?
Right.
No. They all land up being fragile, and they land up being knocked out because the punch resistance goes. And I think that's the case with Andy Ruiz. As far as I'm concerned, he was good, lovable guy, great, and I'm happy that he did manage to do what he did. But I think that he'll never be the same again, unfortunately, which is a shame, a real big shame.
Do you think Otto Wallin, the Swede, is going to move up if he beats Dillian Whyte?
That'd be an interesting fight. Obviously, there's not many people that are favouring, obviously, Wallin for that, which I find interesting, because why not? I mean, he did so well against Fury. He was unbeaten to that point. He's had the points decision over Brazil since. He's got, he looked a good fighter, maybe smaller compared to some of the big juggernauts now, but he does tick every box. Might not be exceptional with each tick, but he certainly is a solid, good box brawler fighter, whichever way you want to look at it. He's very, very good fighter, and I think I wouldn't be surprised if he actually upsets Dillian Whyte.
Yeah. And
I think if he does that, I personally think, I don't think he's going to go all the way, but he's certainly going to be in the mix. I do think Wallin will beat Whyte in that fight, based on how Whyte has looked recently.
It opens up, as I said, as we're looking up and down the line, if you will, of who's going to move up and who's going to move down, quite frankly. To take some of these spots that are going to open up. I mean, let's just say Fury wins. Let's just say he quits after that. He says, "I've won it all. I'm out." You guys fight it out now to find out who's next. It's just going to open up a lot of opportunity, I think, and then who's going to fill those spots, and that's what we're talking about. So I'm kind of curious to see, because if Whyte loses, that's another Brit off the charts, if you will. And who's not? I mean, I like the Nigerian. Like I said, he's going to surprise people.
Yes, very good. Very, very similar to Wilder. I mean, he was actually in sparring partner for Fury, obviously against Wilder for this upcoming fight. But from what I seem to recall, he's been taken out of there. From what I heard, he was actually too vicious, or how can I put it? Fury wasn't looking too good against him. And it's these reports, which could be false, obviously it's put full set of security, all the rest of it, but it's these kind of reports which is making me think that Wilder is going to succeed in this fight. I don't think you're going to see the repeat of Fury Wilder 2 come October the 9th. Back on point, yes, Ajagba, very good. Just trying to think who else is there sort of hovering around. You've got Michael Hunter, as we said. You've got Martin Bacoli. One loss against Michael Hunter. Solid fighter, but again, nothing exceptional. There's no great wins on his record to show that he's going to be there at the top. Tommy Fury. Not Tommy Fury, sorry. Fury's cousin, Hughie Fury, obviously moved over to Boxer/Sky Sports, and they're going to be heavily pushing him. Yeah. Apparently, he's looking very good in sparring, punching heavier. We shall see. But Very good fighter, always going to be in the mix. But it's just an opinion. I just think he's a B fighter, good fighter, ticks most boxes. Another one like Wallin, I just think that every time he moves up to elite, he will lose, which is a shame because very, very likable guy, very dedicated. But I just think that that's another one that's going to be sort of just hovering below elite level. But I hope he does well with the push from Boxer, because Matchroom certainly weren't doing much with him. Who else is there? I'm just trying to think that's worth mentioning at least. Even if there's been some crazy rankings and things coming in.
Is Pulev coming back?
I've heard nothing about Pulev whatsoever. Nothing. But the ratings, maybe I should have checked on those prior, but the ratings are funny. You had in the WBA ratings recently, rated at number 10, you had the Australian guy that David Hay fought. But why he was rated at number 10, really don't know. But I think the best of the rest at the moment is going to be the Wallins. He's beaten Brazil, so let's take Brazil out of the equation. I know it doesn't work like that, but Dillian Whyte, I just think he's going to be the nearly man that he hung around as mandatory for ages with the WBC. Was so close with that. I just think he will, and certainly legacy-wise, kick himself for turning down a rematch with AJ. He was offered, I think it was 5 million or something. It was turned down. Obviously, he's got his reasons. So curious to know what they were. But why? It would have been a Wembley Stadium, 5 million. I don't think, I've just got a funny feeling he's going to never get his shot again. I think you're going to find that an Otto Wallin is going to beat him, and then it's going to be that slope downward from there. In his last two fights with Povetkin, even if he did win the rematch, didn't look particularly good. Very disorganised, even if it was a first round blowout. It was just a free fall. It wasn't measured. And if you had a Povetkin that didn't stagger into the ring for the rematch, again, there could have been another result. But that was a funny one. But it's, Joyce, Daniel Dubois, I haven't mentioned him. I know, with just the one loss with Joyce. I just think he was rushed a little bit into Joyce. And I think they underestimated him, because he is so open. I know he was ahead on the cards before losing to Joyce, but that was a shame. And I think, and certainly he's young enough to come again. They just need to match him right and not rush the return as such.
Right.
How do you feel about Dubois?
Middle of the road. I don't know. It's one of those. You've the way. How do I say this? The way the British think about their own fighters seems to put them on a different level than when compared to global fighters. So although we don't have any Canadian heavyweight challengers at the moment, the Americans certainly do, and there's certainly a lot of them. You don't hear a lot out of South America or even Central America. So I think Daniel Dubois is somewhat overrated, simply because he is from Britain. That's my humble opinion.
I think he'd come again. I just think they need to match him right, because he's certainly got the punch. I just think that the defence, and that was a concern. I did pick Dubois to topple Joe, but I didn't think it was going to land up that way. I personally think he can come again. Tony Yoka, I know you mentioned him prior. It's somebody else which, again, they're being very hesitant with who they're matching him with at the moment. Gold medalist. He's got, he ticks again most boxes, but I think he's never going to become an A fighter. I think he's going to end up being a B plus fighter, unless they're just trying to hold back, wait for everything to settle, then come in and step it up at that point. He's got age on his side. Maybe that's what's happening, but there's nothing so far that has said that he's going to be the one that's going to take over. There isn't anything clear cut with any of them.
Right.
They're either sort of unbeaten but untested, and that's why obviously things were like Jagbar and Sanchez. It'd be good, obviously, sorting that out. You've got who else? You've got Robert Helenius, with the Polish chap who Helenius beat by knockout. They're rematching. I think Helenius will lose the rematch. The Pole should have got that fight. But he doesn't seem, I know obviously from body you can never tell who's the best fighter, but there seems to be discipline or something lacking from him as a fighter. Certainly looks like it from training anyway. But there's nobody else that really does stick out. Ajagba could be the one, but it all depends. I mean, we're better tell. I think on October the 9th, I think a few ticks here and there or crosses against some names are going to be put into place.
True. What I was going to say is something that has come up in conversation on our side among some of the American fighters who we've talked to. They've noticed a different style of fighting coming out of Germany, mainly due to the influx of Eastern European fighters who are moving to Germany and bringing with them a very, not necessarily unique style, but a different style. And although we don't know their names yet, I think in the upcoming years we're going to see some German champions who have had a Eastern European heritage, quite frankly, and a different style of fighting that is going to take some more traditionalists by storm, quite frankly.
Yes, I mean the top one in that bracket of fighters is going to be Ajagba, who obviously the former European champion, still unbeaten, but he doesn't fight often enough. Right. And was it his last bout? He fought Kevin Johnson. Bout went the distance, but Johnson had him rocked and in trouble towards the end of the fight, which was surprising because you don't usually hear about that with Kevin Johnson. I know that in Johnson's prior fight, he knocked out the comeback in Pablo Hernandez. But that aside, you know, a fighter who's unbeaten and who's aiming for the top shouldn't be rocked and in serious trouble with Kevin Johnson at his advanced age.
Right.
And he even vacated the European title to, I hate saying this, but to seemingly duck Joyce. This was something that was being mooted. No, and there's nothing in his prior fights at all that gets me excited. And he's hovering. I can't remember what he's. I know he's rated by the WBA, probably around the 10, 12 mark. And he's been hovering around there for a long time. But you know, his best win is what Chisora. That was in Monaco on points. Very unmotivated. Chisora came into that fight. Caballero won, but that's his best win. And it seems to have stagnated, and he's just not moving on for whatever reason. I personally think there's a lot of doubt in the camp, and I think at some point they're going to wait for a cash and out fight. I mean, he was top on the list to face Fury a while ago. Tyson Fury a while ago, before Fury couldn't fight. No, nothing with him as well.
We're just speaking about the up and comers, the guys who are, you know, looking to challenge as early as next year. And realistically, there are so many, not only names out there, but names that we don't even know yet that are out there. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the year shapes up after these two phenomenal fights that we have upcoming, and you know, just to see who steps into the ring next, so to speak, and challenges. I mean. And I guess there's that other intangible of who's managing them, who's matching them, who's promoting them. You know, and like I said, I think that's where the British and the Americans have their advantages versus either the French, the Germans, or Australians even. You know, anyway, we'll see what happens. But there's more than.
With the undercard on October the 9th, there's certainly no holding back with matching top fighters. I mean, when that was announced, I was so shocked. I thought this is against the norm. It doesn't ever happen.
Right.
Which is why I'm looking forward so much to that night as opposed to this Saturday, which I'm excited for. Just a quick question, just while we're on to heavyweights. Now we're closer to the date, just 2 days. Any further thoughts on the two of them? With AJ and Usyk?
No, I stand by what I originally said. I think this fight is going. I think Joshua is going to knock him out. I think he's not going to take him I think he's going to try as early as quickly as possible to knock him out. That's how I see it going.
Wow.
He's going to take advantage of his reach. He's not going to let Usyk come inside, and he's going to try. I'm just looking into my crystal ball, and like everyone else,
Yes.
but, But if Usyk withstands those first 6 rounds and comes out of those 6, then it might go the distance, and it might go to points. If it goes to points, it can be anyone's fight, and that's why I don't like fights being left in the hands of the judges. But so we'll see how it goes. But my money's on Joshua.
I think some questions will be answered tomorrow on the weigh-in. I'd be very curious to. I know Joshua's got to come in lighter, but Usyk, is he going to come in heavier? Because I think if he does, that's going to take away some of the advantages that he could have had coming into the fight. And if he comes in heavier, I can only guess it will slow him down, which is going to make him more of a target for AJ. Very interesting. I'm usually a bit more opinionated with who I think will win and who won't. But this one, I'm very sort of every day I seem to be internally changing my opinion from one to the other. It's just Usyk. You just from those 2 fights, obviously with Chisora and with the Spoon, you just cannot gauge too much from him. There's not much to base it on. People are making a big thing about trying to compare, sort of like Evan Holyfield when he moved up, and this. It's all completely different, and who he was fighting was completely different as well.
Right.
But then moving on to the 9th with Fury and Wilder, that is the one where I'm sticking to my guns at the moment, and I'm saying Wilder in an upset, and pending the odds, I will put some money on that, and I think Wilder KO as well. I just think that Fury, I still stand by it, is going to take this fight with the wrong approach, I think. And you're going to have a good fighter on a good day against a good fighter on a bad day. Not quite Douglas versus Tyson, but it's going to be a similar kind of thing. Mindset is going to play a lot with this fight, and motivation.
Yes.
And I think, looking at how Fury's been partying, and that you wouldn't see Wilder doing that. Absolutely not.
Exactly.
I stand by that. But next year, as you rightly say, it's going to be an interesting year once the dust settles and the dominoes start falling. It's going to be very curious to see who's at the top and who's going to be next in line. But I still think, though, it's going to be an awkward one, because if AJ wins, he's going to fight Usyk again. If Usyk wins, he's going to fight, AJ again. So regardless who wins with Fury and Wilder, what's going to happen then?
Right.
I think, and a lot of it's going to, it would be obviously with the WBC, it would be Whyte that's next in line. But is he going to beat Wallin? That's certainly no gimme.
That's right.
No, interesting. I think at that point, then it all depends. I think if Fury wins, there's a bit of ins and outs, but at least at that point, the others are going to know what's going on, and they'll be able to match accordingly. But too many of them at the moment are just trying to tick over with non-meaningful fights or just not fighting. But next year, it's going to be a good one for heavyweights.
And you know what? At the end of the day, bottom line, this is great for boxing, the real sport of boxing, not these other gimmicky type events that are happening. What we have coming up in the next month is great for boxing. And what will be around the corner following these fights will be great for boxing. Everyone has their attention now solely fixed on the heavyweight division where it should be. And let's see what happens. It's going to be a great year next year.
Yes, I look forward to it.
Absolutely. Right on. Well, I guess that wraps up our show for today. Thanks for joining me. And again, boxing fans, thanks for joining us. Kristian from Boxen247. I'm from Talkin Fight. And we're going head to head and the toe to toe. And yeah, do you like my Logan Paul shirt?
Sorry?
Do you like my Logan Paul shirt? That's great, eh?
Fantastic. So in the UK, 5 o'clock tomorrow, as I said yesterday, live at 5 in the UK, and Canada, that's 12 o'clock. So till tomorrow.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.